Welcome back, everybody, to the Weekly Source. Very excited to have you and super excited for our guest today. We've got Jason Youngblood, Director, Behavioral Health Strategy over at Cigna. Jason, welcome to the Weekly Source.
Hey, thank you. Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And just for, for way of our audience to get to know you a bit better, you mind just a quick intro on yourself and what you're doing over at Cigna?
Yeah, I've been with Cigna now for 17 years. I'm actually a licensed professional counselor by training, which means I have a master's degree in psychology. Prior to coming to Cigna, I was an addiction specialist. So that means I've worked in various settings. I've worked in locked inpatient hospital units providing behavioral health treatment. I've worked at outpatient clinics. I've worked in community mental health centers doing treatment for individuals with mental health issues and substance use disorder. And so I came to Cigna 17 years ago just to learn about this part of the industry, this managed behavioral care industry, and really fell in love doing utilization management, case management, working with our members. But then about 10 years ago, I was recruited by Cigna's sales team just to begin to talk to clients, and it really grew from one position in one market. Now I oversee a team of behavioral health clinicians who face out to brokers and to our clients across the country. Just like being a therapist is a fascinating job because no two people who walk in your door are ever the same. Two organizations are not the same either. And so it is a very similar dynamic to helping an individual identify their goals and the needs to helping an organization and helping them move from point A to point B.
That's incredible, and a ton to unpack there. And the question I had, and I guess it leads to your timeline and how the roles evolved, is mental health as a whole. I mean, am I correct in saying once taboo is not always a fun word to say, but it wasn't something that was as transparent and out and promoted, and companies really on the forefront to put programs in place for their employees? I mean, can you, sum up, I guess, 16 years of experience into an answer of how it's evolved and why we're at a point now where companies are more willing, right, to work with you all and put programs in place where maybe they haven't been in the past?
Yeah, as it has been an incredible evolution to watch unfold over the last 10 years. It used to be that employer groups offered behavioral health benefits and employee assistance programs, and they really weren't that interested because behavioral health might comprise 3 to 5% of overall total medical spend. But over the last decade, we realize now that people with chronic behavioral health conditions, only 4 out of 10 of them ever will be identified and engaged in treatment. And those people who have medical and behavioral conditions are what is driving spend on plans. So if you look at people who have the most medical spend, catastrophic spend on these plans, typically behavioral health is part of that. And so I think that there has been a lot of focus on destigmatizing mental illness, understanding the connection between the mind and the body, and understanding that behavioral really is important to focus on. Over the last decade, I've really seen a shift in employer groups understanding and reaching out and asking for support. And I like to think the fact that employer groups are asking for support and navigating behavioral health means that individuals are. And in fact, we've seen that, today, year over year, behavioral health is trending 35%, which is unheard of.
And no two companies are the same, right? Just like you said, no two patients or clients are the same. But when you think of, last couple of years, companies doing it, quote unquote, right, what comes to mind? Certain programs, I guess expound on that a bit more.
Yeah. So when I think about employer groups who are doing it right, I think that, back to that employee assistance program that I mentioned, I think one of the things that I learned early on is that employer groups who really focus on preventative behavioral care and really position their employee assistance program as not just for employees, but as a tool for managers. And so if you think about, I manage a large team, and let me tell you, people bring, especially with the stress of COVID, you see people at their best and you see people at not their best. And there are resources that I have as a manager that I don't have to get personally over involved, that if I see a red flag, that I've got a number to call, or I've got a number with my HR partner to call. I've got a referral that I can make. I've got resources, childcare resources to refer people to, legal or financial. Those things, don't undervalue the very importance of those things. I've seen that organizations that position EAP as a management tool and require yearly mandatory training for those kind of preventative behavioral benefits, their utilization for that benefit typically skyrockets. And I think it helps to change the culture at the organization.
Such a good point, because who's talking consulting and working with their employees more than a manager. So whether it's incorporating in a one-on-one or just arming, I guess, a manager to be able to refer to that, reference it, but know it inside and out, or to a certain degree to be able to help their teams. That's a really good point there. I guess before we wrap, obviously in the pandemic now, I know there's a ton that's top of mind for you and your team. I know you've spoken, I saw a webinar with Chris Herron, ex-NBA player, the recovering addict, and mental health. That's something he's in. What is top of mind from your team and things you're working on? I know loneliness study, resilience study. You guys are really putting out a ton of good content.
Yeah. Pre-pandemic, we were really focused on loneliness and understanding that 3 out of 5 Americans are lonely. People who are chronically lonely have worse health outcomes. And the pandemic really just brought that into very sharp relief for us. When the pandemic hit, the world changed so abruptly in so many ways for so many people. It really thrust the entire nation into this acute stress reaction. And so you saw all of us, problems with sleeping, nightmares, irritability. What we're seeing now is the long-term effects of living with higher stress and uncertainty. And then you add in all of the other things going on, a pending election and things like that. And people are really now moved from acute stress to more chronic stress. And people under chronic stress who are more predisposed to behavioral health conditions might be experiencing anxiety, depression, a reoccurrence of substance use issues, eating disorder issues. And we're starting to see a lot of those things kind of come home and really take purchase, I guess, with individuals. So people are challenged. Like I mentioned, behavioral health utilization is skyrocketing at this point. And so I think what's top of mind for us is focusing on resilience. The thing about that is that I think is interesting. You're born with resilience. You learn perhaps poor coping mechanisms. The nice part about that is that you can kind of unlearn those things and redevelop and build your resilience. And that's what our focus is now, given that we're living in a time of chronic stress, that we're not sure where it's going to go away. People's behavioral issues are increasing. How can we help individuals focus on building skills so that they can function better?
And maybe in a funny way, it's why you climb trees when you're younger. And now I was trying to clean my gutters last week. I couldn't get up the ladder without starting to shake. And, maybe that's just a tiny example of it, but that's so true. I guess before we go, when you think about resilience, what are some takeaways you can leave, with them as we get into the winter months? And seasonal depression will probably be top of mind as well. What's something that you can leave with them?
I think call to action is just, looking forward to understand we are coming into a challenging time of year without a pandemic. And with the pandemic, it will be a different fall and winter for everyone. And so, I guess just to keep it very simple, take time out and ask people how they're doing. And when you ask, don't just move on from the response, but really listen and listen to their voice, look in their eyes, and give people an opportunity if they want to talk and they want to connect, and let them know that you're there for them. I would say, even just as simple as smiling at someone, if you're outside and you have your mask off and they're further than 6 feet, but those things are really important. Just the basics of connecting with other people and letting people know that you're there, but just asking how people are doing and then listening.
I love it. Jason, really appreciate your message today, but thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for the time. And everybody at home, thank you for tuning in to the Weekly Source.